So last week, we talked about email engagement, and that got me thinking about a little bit more email related stuff. And while this week might not be as exciting, there are a couple settings that kind of are hidden and obscure, and you probably maybe aren't even thinking about it. So I wanted to bring it up because, well, I just think it's good to be aware of this type of stuff. So before I do that, I just wanted to touch one more point on email engagement really quick. um, if you're filtering through your list and you're seeing all of these unsubscribed people, you might be tempted. Now, let's just delete these people because Kajabi in all of the plans gives me a limit to how many I can have on my contact list. And why bother with unsubscribed people? I can't send emails to them. So the caution I give is some of those might be customers. So if you're going to take a look at your list, everyone that's unsubscribed, with the intention of just culling a bunch of, you know, essentially unusable profiles from your list, just make sure that you also recognize which ones are customers and leave those on. Because sometimes your customers will, they'll have bought something from you, they will be using your stuff, but they just don't want to receive your emails. So, they're still your customers and they're still engaged. They just don't want to be emailed or bothered with that. Could be that they didn't even know they were unsubscribed. So you don't want to just boot those people out because, they paid for your stuff. So that is said. Now, there are two settings that I think are great to talk about, to know about. I mean, kind of boring to talk about, to be honest, but good to know about. So in the settings area, you go into marketing settings, and at the very bottom is a default time at which your email sequences are sent. And I think the reason this is overlooked is because in the email sequence area, when you're building an email, you can set kind of when it's sent. But if you're just doing like day one, day two, day three, and that kind of stuff, well, what time during the day is it being sent? And this is where you can set the standard for all of your sequences. So again, it's in settings, marketing settings, very bottom of the page, and you can just set a time and a time zone for this to be done. And this is actually really helpful if you're working on a Kajabi account, that when you're in the wrong time zone for when you want stuff to be done. For instance, if you are, and this can actually be really helpful if you're working on a Kajabi account where the time zone that you're physically in, that your computer is set to, isn't the time zone you want stuff to be done in. So you can set the time and the time zone as a default for all email sequences to be sent. Now, in any specific email sequence and any email sequences that have been created before you've made this change, they'll have the old time. But if you go into the settings of those email sequences, you can change the time and time zone for those emails as well. So that's the first setting. And the second setting is basically the same, except it's unrelated at all to emails, but it's for drips if you are dripping content in your course. So again, in settings, drip settings, which is right underneath marketing settings, I think, you can set the default time for content to be dripped. And I just think it's great to put that pretty darn early in the morning, because sometimes people will be like, hey, I'm supposed to get my content dripped today. And maybe they're early risers and they go in, and I think the default is 11 a.m. And so they're like, okay, well, it's supposed to be here today and it's today and it's not here. So what's going on? And basically you can just change that time as well. And you can also toggle right there whether or not the email is sent to notify people that their stuff is dripped out or that new content is available. And that is a default email. It comes from the default email templates, also in settings. But that checkbox, that's, as far as I know, the only place where that checkbox lives. And so if you want people to be notified via email when your content is released, that's where you do it. So that's what I have for you today. Hope you have a great week, and I will listen. No, you'll listen to me next time. Anyways, goodbye.